They told me, son, you're special. You were born to do great things. You know what? They were right.
Hello and welcome to the Thinking Historically series, where we look at popular media like a historian. This video series will be outlining a project which teaches students how to think historically with their favorite movies, TV shows, and video games, along with providing many other research methods for young learners. For the purposes of outlining the process for this project, I will be talking about the first video game in the Bioshock series, fittingly titled Bioshock. My name is LJ Bantz, and I am currently in the process of getting my master's in history through George Mason University. I received my bachelor's in history and English from Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa in 2021. This first part will focus mostly on the early and middle stages of the research process. The main goals of this project are threefold. First is to learn how to think like a historian. Second is to discover the historical bias and basis that affect our everyday life. And third, to develop students' research abilities. How do we do that? By having students think critically about the media that they ingest every day. The first step for every project is to choose a topic. When thinking about a topic for this project, it is important to choose something that you already know moderately well. That will make the early stages of the project a lot easier. But keep in mind that it is possible to ruin your love for a movie by learning the historical context for it. I had this experience myself with The Wizard of Oz when I learned about its real-world inspiration. It still hurts a little just thinking about it. Anyway, once you have your topic chosen, the next step is... Now that I have my topic, which is Bioshock, a game that I have played it through at least twice, I need to decide what approach I will take when it comes to this project. We have two main options: looking at the historical influence that affected this game, and looking at the historical influence that this game had. The easiest way to do that is to look into the few of the individual aspects of the game, namely release information, setting, story, reviews, and characters, to try to determine which focus will be better use of my time. Remember, it is possible to be too broad. For something like Star Wars, it is still possible to talk about the impact that it had. I would just focus on a small section of the impact rather than trying to cover everything. Important note, there will be spoilers during this presentation. Bioshock is the first game in a 3-game series and was first released in 2007. I learned this by first starting at the general wiki page for the game. From there, I followed links within the wiki and looked for more information from popular and well-trusted sites for and about video games. I specifically look for interviews that talk to the creators of the games themselves. I want to look at the way that they themselves conceptualize the game. The evidence I find points towards the historical context for the game being more interesting. Before I decide completely, I want to take a special look at the time that this game was released to see if that might shed some light on which topic will more easily bear fruit. Often, historians find themselves launched down research paths because of the existence of evidence. Some fields look down on this practice, but historians are fine being the scavengers of the academic world, looking into historical moments simply because the evidence allows us to. For the research project, I start typically with a single Google search. Something to be aware of is that the effect of language has some major effects on the results that you receive. Either way, your teacher might not like this, but I go to the wiki page and read the encyclopedia entry for the game, looking for specific references to the information I am looking for. As we can see here, there is a reference to the designer's thoughts surrounding the setting of the game. If I click on this blue link and follow the link, I arrive on the archived version of an interview on the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine is a useful tool to access websites that no longer exist. I can see by the date that this website was archived in this 2011 state, but that it originally came out when the game was released. This site will be useful later when looking at the setting. At the moment, though, I am more interested in the moment that this game came out in, so I will read this page and look for that. It says here that this game was inspired by the Rockefeller Plaza in New York in 2002. This could be a thread to follow. Here it says something about the inspiration. I'll save that for later. And here, a description of the process for creating it. This will be an important site to come back to. I continued this process of looking at different sites to try to gain a better understanding of the processes behind this game. The next step before determining my topic is looking at the reception. I can do this by looking at game rating sites like Metacritic and seeing what people were saying about the game both at the time of release and now. A helpful hint? Look once again at Wikipedia and follow the rating sites from there. Wikipedia is an encyclopedia and is usually a great place to start your research, but an awful place to finish. Follow links from Wikipedia and dig deeper into these sites. Either way, once I have read reviews from these different sites and gained a basic sense of how people responded to this game, I'm happy moving on to the next step of making my decision. Although Bioshock was impactful, looking at ludonarrative discussions, for example, these discussions surrounding Bioshock created a new way of understanding storytelling through video games. This is a huge topic, and another historian might choose to focus more heavily on the creation of a ludonarrative rather than the background for the setting. For my purposes, though, I would rather focus on the historical background of the setting rather than the impact this game had. An important part of historical study is the perspective that historians take. Choosing what aspects of the topic, i.e., either the historical background or cultural influence of a story, is an important part of a historian's journey. Make sure to discuss with your teacher or professor what they want you to focus on if this is a project for class. If not, feel free to play around with your perspective as a researcher to find what interests you more. You are the apprentice historian. Of course, when it comes to me, I am more interested in the story than the sociological impact of this game. So let's move on to the next stage of research. Now that I have decided that I'm probably going to focus on the historical background of this game, rather than the historical impact that this game had, I will begin to look for the inspiration. Let's go back to this Wayback Archive website. Right here is a section referencing that the city itself is based off of Art Deco, and then right here we can see that a section of the story being inspired by a few different philosophers. And right here is the name of that philosophy. Objectivism. Perfect. Those are two major influences for this game. There are probably more, but for right now the focuses are just fine. If this is a project for class, the thing you have to keep in mind is your teacher's preferences. So even though I'm looking at two, you should ask your teacher what they want. It could be looking for more or looking for less. At this point, now that I have my general topic and more specific focus narrowed down, I will call this a video. Hopefully you learned a little bit about the basic research methods to start a project, and got a slight glimpse into the mind of a historian. In the next video, I will go more in depth on the rest of the research process and describe how I built the project using the information I gathered. The third video in this series will be the project itself.